our audience has been. Okay, I think we all heard that. Got it? So now we're live and we're out to all kinds of people. I'm going to say good evening. My name is Dr. Betty Tanzi. I am the Vice President of Programs for the Board of the Indiana Council of World Affairs. It is my pleasure to welcome our members and guests to this evening's very special presentation of our ICWA Distinguished Speakers Series for the 2021-2022 program year. This is a two-part program. It is special. We've been planning this one since spring, ever since we first heard that something's going to happen in Afghanistan, and we had special people to bring this on, and we hope that you will recognize this is going to be a most memorable program. This evening, we are live from downtown Indianapolis at the Indiana Humanities. Our facility host for this evening, and we'll be hearing from later this evening. We started this evening out with a live reception just prior to this virtual programming that is now allowing us to take these important programs across the state, the country, and the world. Our Afghanistan program this evening is brought to you in partnership with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, Indiana Humanities, and the International Center. And we welcome a new sponsor for our full Distinguished Speaker Series this season, and that is the Indiana Economic Development Corporation that shares with us the mission to bring viable, credible information, timely and relevant to Indiana citizens and as wide as it can go. And we hope you share that belief as well. And again, consider sponsoring us through a membership. This evening, our panel is coming to us, and again, by the power of Zoom, which we're grateful, from the Ukraine, Virginia, Colorado, and Canada. And just a few months ago, they were literally in Afghanistan at their desks working. A few months ago, these young professionals were taking the education and the training they received in large part on the generosity of American funding and getting degrees that would help them enable the new hope and a promise of bringing Afghanistan forward. With respect to its magnificent culture and its history. And this was in areas of civil society, diplomacy, global engagement, peace and security, human rights, and women's rights. Very important, women's rights. We hear a lot about that this evening. They each received an undergraduate degree from either the American University of Afghanistan or the American University of Central Asia. They came of age. I love that expression by Dr. Ken Holland. We knew them as students. They came of age over the last 20 years in their roles, which we're going to hear about this evening. I'd also like to thank Dr. Ken Holland, who's sitting here to my right, who has been working with me in offering these panelists these special programs. He is still the president emeritus of the American University. He won't be going back next week, but no. the president emeritus of the American University of Afghanistan. And I knew the students when I served as a visiting academic and a researcher at the American University of Central Asia, and later as a program specialist. The panelists for last week's program and this evening were all our students. We know every single one of them. And it's wonderful to be with them again this evening, work with them in different capacity. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce the panelists. Masuma Tajik is a data analyst and civil society activist who helped monitor Afghan humanitarian and development programs that should facilitate this discussion as a conversation. And as an added note, as Masuma was sharing, as each of us were sharing the background with us, Masuma, what happened to her on the way to the airport happened to so many others, particularly women. She was whipped as she was trying to get out of the country. These are really real stories. Ajmal Brahanzoy is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Toronto in Canada. And he was evacuated in August from Kabul, where he was teaching at the American University of Afghanistan and conducting his dissertation research. Sohaila Khaiber Jalali served as project coordinator for the United Nations Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security on behalf of the Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And Jawed Samsour was an adjunct instructor at the American University of Afghanistan, worked in Kabul as a program manager for the United States Institute of Peace, and was evacuated on the day of the deadly ISIS bombing at Hamid Karzai International Airport. One of our panelists said last week, to show you just how close this was, he went to his desk that morning, his job in Kabul, what he was doing, thinking he was going to have a normal work day. And by the end of the day, he just basically got leave the country and had been seized. These panels bring a unique perspective. Again, earlier this summer, they were all engaged in their work, which for most of them was the ministries and NGOs in Afghanistan. None of them had as a future career to be a refugee. We've asked them to please share with us their thoughts on a number of our questions, including how the US changed the result of US intervention, the plight of those still in Afghanistan, what will happen with human rights, what will happen with women's rights, what they see happening now in their own lives, and what can the ordinary American do to help Afghan refugees and those still struggling to escape Taliban. Masuma, are you ready to start facilitating this discussion? I'm going to
Yes,
ask.
thank you so much, Ms. Tonzing.
I'm going to ask everybody too on Zoom to please mute yourself so we don't hear any background noise. This is those of you in the audience. If you're not already muted, please mute yourself. And panelists, will you please unmute yourself?
Thank you so much, Ms. Tonzing. It's a very great pleasure to be here tonight and speak to you. And thank you so much for providing this opportunity for us to share our thoughts. And it's been 2 months that I'm in Ukraine, in Kiev city, and when I came to Kiev, so the only thing that I was thinking about was my career and my studies, and that was the only reason that I wanted to I'm so sorry. It's been 2 months that I'm in Ukraine, in Kiev city, and I escaped from Kabul in a hope of saving my career and saving my life. And it's a very great pleasure to be here tonight and speak to you. And it's a great pleasure to see my professor here as a panelist tonight. And I would like to give 5 minutes to each panelist to introduce themselves and talk more about their role in Afghanistan before their departure, and how they left Afghanistan, and what are they doing now. So I would like to start with Mr. Borhanzoy.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Borhanzoy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. Greetings to you all. I'm very delighted to be here. Let me start by thanking the Indiana Council on World Affairs for organizing this wonderful event and inviting me to partake in it as a panelist. I especially would like to extend my sincerest thanks to Dr. Holland, who initially reached out to me and informed me about this opportunity. My name is Ajmal Borhanzoy, and I'm a child of war. Yes. I was born in 1981, and the civil war in Afghanistan was already underway at this time for at least 3 years, well, depending on where we mark the starting of the civil war in Afghanistan. During my upbringing, I have witnessed the withdrawal of the Soviets from Afghanistan, and the fall of the Soviet-backed regime, the demise of the Mujahideen that overtook that remainder of whatever was remaining in Afghanistan, then the fall of the Taliban, the withdrawal of the US very recently with their allies, and the fall of the government that was backed by them, and eventually the takeover by the Taliban. So I have allocated a good chunk of my life to academically understand the volatility and development in Afghanistan that I've experienced and witnessed. I'm currently a doctoral degree candidate in political science, focusing on international relations at the University of Toronto here in Canada. My dissertation research focuses on understanding the effects of great power rivalry on shaping the competition and fragmentation among opposition movements or political parties in developing states. I more specifically focus on understanding how the Soviet and Chinese rivalry affected the contours of political leftist movements our activism in Afghanistan between 1964 to 78 before the Russian takeover or invasion. After spending 10 years in the US and Canada pursuing graduate education, I returned to Afghanistan in June of 2018 to conduct my field research for my PhD dissertation. I taught international relations as an adjunct instructor at the American University of Afghanistan, and I also worked in administrative or management capacity with some of the projects. I managed a research project funded by European Union. The title or the name of the project was Preparing for Peace. We looked into how we could possibly integrate Taliban into the Afghan society after a peace deal, which never happened, unfortunately. After that, I started managing a development project entitled Advancing Higher Education for Afghanistan's Development, which was or still is funded by USAID. So that's something that I still am nominally working as, but our operations have ceased since the takeover of the Taliban. I was in Kabul city, living with my elderly parents when looking after them in a way during the fall of the Islamic Republic. So I'm talking about around August. The situation was deteriorating very fast, and the actual fall on the 15th of August came quite unexpectedly. On 15th, I started reaching out to both the Canadian and American governments to help me and my parents and my aunt, who was visiting us very bad timing from the US, and she was stuck with us. So I reached out to the Canadian and the American governments to evacuate us. I received a communication from the US government to arrive to Kabul airport for evacuation on 18th actually. So I did not know what to anticipate when I was leaving the apartment. I seriously feared for my life because of my Canadian citizenship, and also due to the association that I had with the AUF and the international community. But luckily, we made it through the only Taliban checkpost that I hit during this journey between our apartment and the airport. And I begged this scrawny Talib soldier for a good 15 minutes to let us through the razor barbed wire fence that they had set up. Anyhow, we were flown out of the Kabul airport in a British C-17 airplane. Yeah, that's the cargo planes that most of you have seen in the recent videos. We were flown to Dubai, where we spent a night and a day. Then we were flown to a US military base in Ramstein, where we spent 4 days and 5 nights, or 4 nights and 5 days, something like that. Then we were flown to Dulles Airport in Virginia, where we sat in the plane after it had landed for 11 hours before we disembarked the plane. We were released from the US custody at this point, but I didn't want to stay in the States. So we spent a night in Virginia in a hotel room before our final flight. This is me and my parents, because my aunt had already flown to Colorado at this time. So we flew to Buffalo Airport, and then I crossed the border via taxi on 27th. We reached my sister's apartment in East York, Ontario at 10 p.m. on 28th of August. The long and hardest journey that I've ever taken in my life came to an end safely, but it did leave some scars and marks on my psyche, I think. There are several important details of the most harrowing journey that I've ever taken, especially with my elderly parents, but I will stop here for the sake of timekeeping now. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have during the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Borhanzai, and I'm very happy that you are safe and sound now.
Thank you.
And Ms. Sohaila Nazari, are you there? Can you hear me? Ms. Nazari?
Sohaila Khaibar Jalali.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So First of all, I want to thank the Indiana Council on World Affairs for organizing this very important panel to let Afghans like us express their experiences about how they suffered the situation in Afghanistan. And I will keep it short. As Mr. Burhanzoy mentioned, we are like the children of war. We were born and raised in a country where we have always been facing difficult situations due to the ongoing war. So I've never in my life experienced like the stable Afghanistan. But yeah, so I am one of those, I would say, like fortunate people who, like after the fall of the first Taliban regime, had the chance to continue study, and then I got scholarship to study at the American University of Central Asia, pursuing a career in international and comparative politics. And right after that, I had the chance to pursue my MA degree, again in political science and international studies. After the studies, I went back to Afghanistan, and I have experience of working with different organizations such as the USAID Project Counterpart International, Open Society Institute, which was later on called Open Society Afghanistan, and also UN Women. I also had the privilege of working for American University of Central Asia, coordinating the Young Afghan Women Scholarship Program with close coordination with the US Embassy in Afghanistan. So unlike my fellow panelists, so I was here in US slightly before what happened in Afghanistan, before the fall of the Afghan government, but I was in touch, and I do have lots of things to tell about, because through our direct contacts, family members and friends from Afghanistan, which we will be talking about it during the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sohaila Khabar Jalali. And now, Mr. Samsur. Are you there, Mr. Samsur?
I don't think he hears.
Yeah.
Must have, he's muted. Can you maybe let him know in his chat?
All right.
All right, I think you can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Indiana Council on World Affairs for providing this opportunity to speak and share our story tonight with everyone. My name is Javed Samsur. I'm currently staying in Colorado. With my wife, and
I think that we lost connection with Mr. Samsur.
okay, I'll try to be very brief, and I'll try not to share because I know that every time I try to share the story, I get very emotional. And it's it's hard for me to talk about them. So what I'll do in this part is just talk about my background, what I did before I came to the US, and then maybe later on.
I understand that he might have faced many challenges and if you want to take your time, it's okay.
Matsuma, maybe you'd like to tell us a bit about the work that you were doing in Afghanistan.
Okay. So it's been only 4 months. 4 months that I graduated from American University of Afghanistan, and I was hoping to wear this graduation gown and celebrate my graduation. And I was working with a private company in Kabul, and we were monitoring humanitarian and development projects implemented by UN and also World Bank in Afghanistan. And for now, that it has been 2 months that I moved to Kiev, and it's been exactly 2 months that these projects are on hold, and we are not getting new projects. And back then, I was helping with analyzing data coming from these development projects to promote and help the policymakers to make better decisions. And so I was seeing the name of Mr. Borhan Zoy and also Mr. Samsor on the canvas in the website of the university, but I never had the chance to take a class with them because I was doing computer science and I was barely visiting social sciences building. And but it's a very great pleasure to be here and speak to you today. And for now, in Kiev, I don't have any specific plan for now, as I'm the situation here is quite unclear for me because I'm not a legal resident here, and I'm not a refugee as well, and I have been trying to seize educational opportunities, but due to the fact that I don't have any legal status, I'm not able to pursue more educational opportunities. And how did I live Afghanistan? In the first day that the Taliban took Kabul, I was on the street. I had a backpack with me and I had a laptop inside it, and it didn't even have a charger. And I went outside to buy a charger, and I was evacuated by Wall Street Journal, and they called me and told me to get to the airport as soon as possible. And I went, and I spent around 6 days trying to get into the airport. And well, I was trying. I was whipped by Taliban, but this is the price that we paid for refusing to live under the regime of terror and darkness. And I am very happy that my friends and my professors are now safe and sound. Still, I have left my family behind. I have left my friends behind. And I am hoping to be able to help them through speaking up about the current situation in Afghanistan. And thank you so much for creating this platform so that we can speak about it. And Mr. Samsor, are you better now?
Be okay to for everyone to share about myself. So I worked with the U.S. Institute of Peace as a program manager for 3 years. I went to school. I did my master's degree through the Fulbright program, Kansas State in 2013. And I also taught at the American University as an adjunct lecturer of management. So in the undergraduate degree program for the last 3 years, I mostly taught management courses. Most of my career is relates to program management and mostly related to higher education. Luckily, I know Dr. Holland for quite a long time now. We came to know each other in 2014 when I was back to Afghanistan after finishing my master's degree, and I started working with him at the National Institute of Management and Administration as the Director of Academic Affairs. That's a little bit about my background, but most of my life, I lived my childhood in Pakistan for 20 years. And then my family and I moved back in 2005. And then after that, we stayed until 2020 in Afghanistan, just, travel back and forth to different places. I'm in Colorado. I've been a journey of months from Kabul to Qatar, and then from Qatar to Germany. I'm glad Jamal was able to get out of quickly. We stayed there for a week. That was a horrible experience that I had. And then we moved to Virginia. We stayed at Fort Pickett for 40 days. And after that, even though the process is really long for the evacuees to get out of the bases, but I was lucky to get out. I contacted the settlement agency here in Colorado, and they were able to take my case. So I moved here instead of staying in Virginia because that was where I wanted to go, but I see that there's a lot of trash there. I'll try to share more about the story, what we went through. I know it's very hard. Every time I try to talk about it, I get very emotional. So I'll stop right there and then see if there's any other questions that are directed to me, and I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samsour, and we are very happy that you're safe and sound now. So I'd like to start from the so the first question I'd like to ask that from Mr. Borhanzoy. How did Afghanistan change as a result of the U.S. intervention? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a broad question, and I think we have to narrow it down to a few areas where we could think about progress, and we could also think about side effects, if you will, of interventions that come from outside and change the dynamics of domestic societies that we intervene into. So for the most part, it was probably one of the biggest experiments with democracy, human rights, women's rights and women empowerment, education and technology with it in Afghanistan. So from those perspectives, if you look at it, we made a lot of progress over the 20 years. Yes, our government system was fraught with a lot of difficulties, institutional, social, you name it, but still there was hope. There was this future that we all thought that one day these institutions would mature and flourish and would deliver the kind of governance and structures and services and representation that the ideals have always promised us. And I think we were going towards that direction. Yeah, we had a lot of instances where we could point fingers. I didn't say, no, it was bad, it was corrupt, it was not working, it was dysfunctional. A lot of people, got away with a lot of goodies here and there, and they fell in their pockets. But the overall assessment that I now, even that it's all gone, I lay in my bed and I'm like, what happened? Like, I'm still trying to process what has happened. Like, it's the stages of days and confusion, like, can't make sense of much. But still, when I think about it, now that it's gone, I know that, oh, that was good. We had it. We were experimenting with stuff. We were building something. We were allowing women to get empowered. We were allowing minorities to have representation. We were thinking about very foundational things that a democratic society should be thinking about and working on, and experimenting with, learning from their failures and working on it. So to me, that's something that the intervention brought into focus. Things that yeah, we had other experiences with democracy, but this time this was through a different lens, through a different perspective. And then with that came the market economy and empowerment of people, individuals to initiate different entrepreneurship mentalities that they had and put that into practice, make linkages to the outside world, and actually think about how we could tap into the world economy and be part of it in this global village that we are living now as an economic system that is there, right? So a lot of improvements, a lot of initiatives, a lot of policies, if you will, a lot of institutions were put in place, worked on, and also plans for future. In terms of other developments, I think we did go back to revisiting infrastructure work. Some work was done. Of course, it was very little done, but still, we did get some irrigation dams built. We did get some roads built. We could have done better, of course, but as a result of the intervention, some work on infrastructure was accomplished, and a lot more was being planned and worked on and discussed in the government of Afghanistan. So these are the things that you could definitely put your finger on and say, yes, we made progress here. And of course, if you go and assess it from a very cynical perspective, yeah, a lot of corruption was happening. A lot of known people were being, circulated from one position to the other. So of course, those networks were, if you will, turn the system into a kleptocracy, where they were just turning the huge government machinery to just get rich and richer. And I think we know those people, and I think there's ample evidence to make those linkages where they were supported from outside and how, and all that stuff. So that was also there. And of course, the fact that intervention itself had our neighbors not be easy with us also backfired in a lot of ways. I mean, Pakistan, Iran, and our neighboring China, or Russia, or Central Asian states, they were not easy with the Americans being, there. And they play their own game. So a lot of regional dynamics changed because of that intervention that happened under the leadership of the US. So if you look at the intervention from that perspective, then it did intensify the fragmentation of the Afghan society, because our neighbors, our regional neighbors, and also the power dynamics at the macro level played into making those social cleavages even more acute, because all these rivals would try to win one over the other faction and support them in one way or another. So in a way, I think ethnic politics and regional politics within Afghanistan took a sinister turn, and turned from something that were discussed in the primordial literature of the Western world into actually being practiced and discussed daily on platforms like Facebook. Facebook, very toxic environment. If you scroll down, if you scroll down the Facebook, whatever it's called, all you see from very well-educated Afghans all around the world is debating about ethnic hatred and language issues and regional whatevers, which stopped us from achieving a lot of good stuff that we could have under this intervention. So that's a very bad turn that we took. And I think in a lot of ways, the intervention and the US presence or the Western presence there perpetuated those issues. So I think that was a short answer. We could talk about it more, but I would leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burhanzoy. And Ms. Sohaila Khaybar Jalali, what do you think? What is the fate of the generation of the generation that came of age during this intervention?
Thank you so much. Well, almost most of my points were already mentioned during the speech of Mr. Burhanzoy about the intervention, U.S. intervention in Afghanistan. It's different views on this intervention. Of course, some people will call it like invasion. Some people may call it on different thing. But for us, or especially for me as an Afghan teenager, it was a dream for us. It was a dream that one day, like we were talking about it, my mother sometimes was saying that maybe when we were like suffering from the Taliban regime in 90s, she was dreaming that someday that UN forces or US forces will come and kind of make us free of Taliban and bring peace and stability in our country. And that one day really came true. And it was the time that maybe I didn't understood at that time, but I was so much happy. And like me, hundreds and thousands of Afghan girls and women who could go back to their schools, join universities, or started working. So Afghan women, after the intervention of US, started like from zero. Even before Taliban, there were like domestic wars, like between the warlords. So Afghanistan was suffering a lot from it. But after the intervention of US, the doors of opportunities was open to Afghan women. And I'm sorry, pardon me for talking so much about Afghan women, because I really see the need for, when as a women rights activist, I feel obliged to talk more, taking into consideration women's issue and progress and in the past 20 years. So yes, the doors of opportunities were open. Women were going to school and universities. I myself, I got opportunity to go out of country, like for the first time in my life, to get scholarship and study abroad, which was a dream came true. And I'm afraid I'll go like out of the question, but I'm sorry being so much excited and emotional about it. A lot of changes happen in women's lives. So whatever we have in this, whatever the world is now talking about losing it, we achieved during this past 20 years as a result of the US intervention. What just happened, we were not expecting. But I think it's not too late for the international community and for the US in particular to stop or to help Afghan women and every Afghan people, but especially Afghan women and Afghan girls who are still remaining in Afghanistan and seeking and looking up to US and international community and our international partners for help and support to somehow support them get out of this situation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Khabar Jalali, for insightful thoughts. And so, Mr. Samsour, what do you think that what is the plight of those left behind in Afghanistan, and what challenges they're facing?
Thank you. I think this is a great question. A short answer would be those who are left behind, they are living in uncertainty. They are living under great stress, not knowing what's going to happen to them. The safety would be one of the first thing that will come to their mind, and that's what I'm hearing from there. That's the first thing that's happening to them. They're worried about their safety. And it's not easy to be standing in their shoes right now. Because there was a government, there was a system in place, of course, and everything gone in a blink of an eye. They don't know what's going to happen, what the future of the country is holding. Same time, for them to see a place in the Taliban regime for themselves, even though the Taliban are calling upon those who work in the government, men and women, to come back and work with them. But they see a great risk to their lives, and then they see no future working with them. And then at the same time, I would give an example of a statement that was given by the higher education minister of the Taliban, who were educated with Western education in the last 20 years, whether in Afghanistan or outside, they are of no use to the country, into the society. So that actually sends a very clear message to those who came back, those who studied, those who were educated, those who were dedicated to work the country. That's a clear message to them that they are of no use. And then whether we look at the education side of it, so we see right now one of the great challenges, and it's on the media everywhere, is access to education for women. I have my nieces, they are staying at home. That's a simple example that I can relate to. They cannot go to school, and that's a great risk that they are living right now. That's what they are facing. So it's the same situation what we have seen in the 90s, when women were banned from going to school. They stayed at home. They didn't have the opportunity to study or to work. That's the other side of it. We see on a daily basis that there are protests by women coming out on the streets, demanding their rights, their basic rights. And it's difficult for men to actually raise their voices. We see that people are being butchered, killed in the provinces. 3 weeks ago, I heard that some of my relatives, they were killed, they were hanged brutally by the Taliban. So in Kabul, you would see that there's a lot of media attention, a lot of scrutiny, and it's difficult they're trying to, Taliban has set up that show, showing to the world that they are trying to, that they are meeting all the demands of the international community. But in fact, the majority who lives, in the villages or in the provinces, they are the ones at the greater risk. Economic side, the financial side, I'm sure most of you are hearing in the news what's happening to the banking sector. People have no access to the banking services, or those who have access to it, they are not allowed to take out a certain amount in each week. And then we see that those who are working, those who had jobs is another challenge that who are left behind or facing a problem. We have seen protests, we have seen incidents on the media, and I'm hearing back again from home. People don't have enough to feed their families. So those are the type of challenges, the type of situation that they are in. And I feel like right now with the mindset that the Taliban regime has, things may not. Okay, so let's got disconnected. I'll stop right there. That
Hi. Thank you very much, Mr. Sansour. And Ms. Khabar Jalali, what is the future of women in Afghanistan right now under the Taliban regime? What will happen to their achievements so far?
So as we heard from our panelists, a lot has been said, and also through the media nowadays, there are like lots of talk going on about what will happen to Afghan women. What is the future of Afghan women, like in Afghanistan? So as we see and hear from the media, that there has been a lot of limitation on women's education, on women's work, on women's like public civic political participation. And so far, even though there have been like promises, not promises, but some like Taliban were saying that there will be education open to the secondary school for girls and for women's or university education. But actually, no concrete statement or promise have been from Taliban side so far. And there has been also talk about like separate classes, separate education system for women in Afghanistan, which is itself maybe possible in theory, but not in practice, because Afghanistan is not at that level. Why I am saying at that level? Because there's like a lack of facilities in our universities. And also lack of, the most important, lack of professional teachers and professors. And then if we continue like this with not professional teachers and professors, so it will directly impact the quality of the education they are getting. Which altogether is not a possible solution for Afghan women education. There are so many other issues that women are facing in Afghanistan nowadays. Not only participation, but a lot could be done. A lot could be done. We will come to that to the next level. So one thing that I've noticed, everyone was saying that Taliban has changed. So there is no change. I, as an Afghan woman, as someone who have experience of life under the Taliban as a teenager, I see no changes in Taliban's ideology in regards to women. If the only change we can see in Taliban's behavior today a little bit, just the primary school for girls or something, it's all because they wanted the moment to seek recognition from the world, from the international community to establish their government. Other than that, there is not much change. The same ideology of banning women and girls from education, from work, from public sphere, from meaningful political and civic participation. Although women's participation, meaningful participation, is a very crucial thing for development and prosperity of a country, and for well-being of a country. But that is something ignored by Taliban totally. And from the very beginning, from the time when the US peace negotiation or peace process was going on with Taliban, we, and like me, so many other Afghan women, we were not hopeful for that at all, because we knew the nature of Taliban. We knew that what is going on the areas under their control, even at that time when the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan was still functioning. So it was very obvious and very clear. I don't know how promising and how satisfied their answers were for international partners and for the US allies, but for Afghans and Afghan women especially, it was not convincing at all. And that's what we are experiencing today. That's what exactly we are experiencing today. And there is not even assurance about it that it will change in the future. So if Taliban will be let on their own, as it was left in 90s and late 19th, so I see no future for Afghan women in Afghanistan. Because it's not something that we Afghan women don't want anything additional from Taliban. We don't demand something like extra. We demand only what we have written in our constitution, the basic rights, the fundamental rights, the women's human rights, which is universal and which is not negotiable at all.
Thank you, Ms. Khabar Jalali. And Mr. Borhanzai, what do you think that what are the opportunities for those who managed to leave Afghanistan following the Taliban takeover?
I think we could look at it from opportunities. I mean, let me think. First of all, those who are young and ambitious, they could obviously pursue better educational opportunities. They could educate themselves with drive and passion for the future. I'm not, I mean, it's a moving target. We don't know what's going to happen to Taliban, but they're not going to last long, hopefully. At least that's the hope. And there would be another opportunity for educated people to do something for the society, for the country that they had to leave so abruptly and in a horrible fashion. So that, I think, provides a very huge impetus for those younglings to go and educate themselves in different professions in the anticipation that one day the opportunity would arise for them to go back and serve. The second thing that we could do, at least we are doing it right now, is to talk about the horrible conditions that we experienced. At least I was there for 3 days after the Taliban had taken over, and I have the experience of them taking over Afghanistan before, and also living under a condition where they were terrorizing us every day. So we have to, in a way, transmit that knowledge, that experiential knowledge that we have to the outside world through platforms like this, through fora like this, and have the outside world think about what they could do and what they have done that did not work and shouldn't do. I mean, there are a lot of lessons that we could learn from this episode of intervention. We did some things wrong, and we did a lot of things wrong. So this is an opportunity for the outside world to not just engage with those powerful actors that they were engaging, but actually engage with people who are the recipients or the downstream recipients of the well-intentioned policies and money and programs that were implemented or were being implemented at the time that they were living there, right? So it's a moment of reflection, learning, sharing, and thinking about future, a future that we could all hopefully prepare for in a better way. And then, of course, some people would say, well, I don't want to do anything with the place that I left. I want to leave it behind. It's an opportunity for them to become better citizens and productive citizens of a new society, and adopt it into a lifestyle that's healthy from all perspectives, and live a good life, at least a decent life that any human being should be able to live. So these are the opportunities that I could think of. I'm pretty sure there are other thoughts from Javi John and Sahila John. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Burhanzai. And Mr. Samsur, what do you think that what will happen to human rights and to humanitarian activities in Afghanistan?
The way I see it right now at the moment, it's not an easy path that the international community would be walking through, because the Taliban has already been under a lot of pressure. The money are economically, the 9.3 or 9.6 billion amount of money has been seized and frozen basically, and they don't have access to that. But at the same time, I see that creates a big challenge for humanitarian support and NGOs working there, because right now we do not have, even though the Taliban are posting different statements, we see that there is a lot of confusion in how they communicate right now with the outside, and whether they can be trusted. So trust would be one of the key things. I know there's a lot of countries, a lot of the international community would want to help Afghans in the country, but to me, it should start with a watch and see at the beginning, and then see how start with with the first fewer or small steps, and then see how the Taliban reacts to that, and whether the Taliban basically can provide the support to sustain that, and later on that could provide the opportunity or pave the way for other humanitarian organizations to go and help. But I see that right now the country is at a greater risk. The people are suffering from financial crisis. I see that that directly affects millions of Afghans not having food on their table. So that's the other side of it. And I guess that's one of the biggest questions right now, are the most important one for the international community to think about and try to come up with a solution for that. A solution that's sustainable, a solution that really work and help reduce the crisis. I'm not sure it would be international community would be able to manage that, even though the capability. But seeing what has happened in Afghanistan, that basically shows that it shows the international community failed. Just to be very candid about that. I'm not sorry about that to say that, but that actually shows that the international community basically failed in Afghanistan, and how Afghanistan is facing that situation right now.
Thank you. Ms. Khaber Jalali, how can the US help refugees and those who are still struggling to escape from Taliban rule?
Thank you so much. Well, Although I really appreciate the evacuation of most of the vulnerable, a large number of vulnerable Afghan women and other Afghans like those we have in the panel today by US government and by other international partners. But trust me, this is not the solution. This is not the solution. And there are, how many of them could be evacuated and how many of them we can help? This is not the final, the long-lasting solution for the problem of Afghanistan and for the people who are like under the threat still in the country. So I would say that instead of, yes, as long as they can evacuate more people, they can help more people. If they wish to, they're most welcome. But in case there are like so many barriers for this evacuation, we have so many bad experiences, so many stories, so many traumas from the first evacuation of the Afghans by American and by our international partners. Even if they are here, most of them are challenging even more issues like they are like psychologically have traumas, like they are facing so many difficulties. And what about those women? I don't know how many more women's US can be can evacuate from Afghanistan at the moment. So let's think of a long solution for this issue. I think that US and the international community can do much more than that to help Afghan women and Afghan people who are like still in Afghanistan and who are still suffering and who are like hiding, some of them, because they're like at great risk by Taliban. So there are several things that the US and most of our international partners can do at the moment. I really urge them to take this issue very seriously. Otherwise, it will be too late. It means now or never, for me at least, as an Afghan woman. I've been in contact with my friends, with my colleagues, like on daily basis, and I'm still in contact with most of them. Both internationally and domestically, a lot could be done and a lot can be done. Like on the domestic level, most of our brave Afghan women are like going on the streets and doing like demonstrations and claiming their rights from Taliban, even though it's very risky, even though there were violently Taliban were like treating them, but they're still, it means Afghanistan is a transformed society. Women of Afghan women are not ready to compromise their rights. Being here, I really appreciate them. I really appreciate them because they are not only fighting for their rights, but for the future generation of Afghan women and girls who will be later on paying for this thing if today nobody will raise their voice for them. Domestically, yes, a lot is being doing, but they are looking up to the US and to the UN and the other international community, international partners to help them and support them through different channels, different mechanisms. Yes, because Taliban are desperately seeking recognition from the world, from the international community. So this is the time that somehow this recognition should not be given for them easily, but instead there should be bargaining and on some very important issues with them regarding women's right, minority right, and religious minority people are also suffering in Afghanistan. So these are the things that should be negotiated with them. And also Afghanistan is an aid-dependent country. As Mr. Samsor mentioned that the money that was given to Afghanistan is somehow frozen by the US and international community. I know it's very difficult time. People are suffering. Situation is very tiring in Afghanistan. But still, if this money will be given, there is no guarantee that this will be used for Afghan people directly, but on other purposes, as previously Taliban has been doing those things in regards with their relation to the most of the terrorist groups and things like that. Domestically and internationally, a lot of pressure should be put on Taliban to give the fundamental and the universal rights of women, minority groups, and a religiously minority group of Afghanistan. And if Afghanistan if Taliban, if the international community let Taliban on their own, so the same experiences will be repeated again. The developments that have been achieved during the past 20 years will be reversed, and Afghanistan will be pushed to the dark ages once again. Trust me, it's easy to listen about this, but it's very hard to for someone who have experienced this, and I have experienced this in the previous Taliban regime as a teenager, and I have so many traumas from that time. So I never want my fellow Afghan women, my colleagues, my family members to experience the same thing again. And I really urge the international community to please do not let us alone, and stand in solidarity with Afghan women in Afghan minority groups, not to repeat the previous mistakes. Thank you.
Masuma, I'm going to interject at this point. We've got a lot of questions coming in from the audience. I want to thank you very much. You had a very good discussion. I want to thank the panelists. It was, we could see this is very difficult and very painful. We're very sorry. Thank you for sharing with us so honestly. I'm going to ask Dr. Ken Holland if he will now ask questions that the audience has given to us. Now, again, this is hybrid. I just a few moments ago, I was looking to see who else was in our audience, and I guess everybody could see that. So the questions are all in chat. And so I'm a little, this is new hybrid for me. If we go to chat so Dr. Holland can see the questions, does that mean everyone else will see the questions?
Yes, just click the chat, and then you'll get the questions from the online audience, and then you can ask anyone here if they have any questions, raise their hand.
Did you understand that?
Yeah, so maybe scroll up to the first question.
I'm going to try.
Okay.
I want a mouse. I don't like this.
Actually, what I'd like to do is go to the in-person audience first. And I know many of you have questions. So please raise your hand and I'll recognize you, and you can ask a question to all the panelists or any particular panelist. So who would like to ask a question? Yes, please.
Taliban now controls Afghanistan. How much of the population of Afghanistan does the Taliban represent over democracy?
Bruce, do you want to speak up again and ask that?
The Taliban now controls what the West calls the country of Afghanistan. The question is, how much of the population does the Taliban actually represent in the form of what the West would be used to of a democratic vote? How much of it is just imposed on the country because they have bigger guns and more of them?
Okay, good. So let me turn that question to Ajmal. So Ajmal, the Taliban actually never left Afghanistan. We know that in 2001, their government was defeated, but many of them stayed. Some went to Pakistan, obviously, but many of them stayed, kind of melted into their home villages. And when I was working in Afghanistan with NATO, the Taliban controlled 40% of the rural areas and about 100 of the 400 districts. So they've always been in Afghanistan for many, many years. They obviously have rural support, especially. What percent of the population do you think has always supported them and continues to support them?
Well, that's a great question, but I think I would shy away from putting exact numbers. But I could talk about it in the abstract and what I have experienced while I lived there, right? So the Taliban, yeah, they never left. They were pushed and they resided in that, no man's land between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And of course, they went into hiding in places where they could, inside, not just necessarily along the border with Pakistan, right? But they reemerged, and they reemerged because of some of the things that went wrong from the international society under the auspices of the US and also the government itself. Like the government did do things that alienate populations that did not have any alternative but to turn into the Taliban, right? I could talk about really good examples from my own hometown, which is Khanabad, Kunduz, one of the northern provinces that is bordering Tajikistan. Especially towards the latter times of Karzai government, it was, I think, spearheaded by the US. They started putting in power the local militias, the remnants of the previous Mujahideen. They call them local police or militia, whatever you name it, the strong warlords or commanders, and use them as a way to fight against the incursion of the Taliban in the rural areas and the villages and in the suburbs, right? And that actually backfired very badly because it disenfranchised a lot of people, alienated a lot of people from the government, and kind of pushed them towards sympathizing with the Taliban. And I would get into not a lot of details how that happened because there was a lot of stuff in movement, but these were thugs in some cases, well-known abusers of human rights and whatnot, and with their long history from the time of the Mujahideen onwards. And actually, these militias represented the government of Afghanistan in a lot of the places outside of the bigger cities. And they were draconian, they were leeching on people in any way possible. So it was a very bad representation of the Afghan government to those people in the rural areas. In fact, it's delegating your authority and power to a bunch of thugs and criminals and those who know nothing but the language of power and seizing and capturing from other people. And, to me, that probably it's one of the factors, but one among many factors that disenfranchise people and push them towards Taliban in the rural area especially, right? So that allowed the Taliban to kind of come in and provide public goods or governance institutions, for instance, resolving land disputes between two. The local militia would, take bribes or whatnot, and so things like this. And I'm taking this instances from my hometown of Khanabad as anecdotal evidence that this happened elsewhere too. And I know for a fact that it happened elsewhere because I talked about this quite a lot with my friends when I was in Afghanistan. So that was one of the factors. And we can talk about a lot of other factors like, the fairness of the elections that we put, the intermingling of the outside intervention, and debunking it's basically derailing the normal process of a democratic process and tilting the results one way or another. And this made people read into, oh, this is, you know, a project being imposed from outside, nothing here that's organic and original and domestic. So Taliban may be representing some of the domestic local interests or culture, if you will, or religious, whatever. So they presented their narrative in different shapes and forms. And for a fact, we know that some people bought into those narratives and those stories, that they are actually representing a better future, a better safeguard against the outside intervention and mingling, and, you know, eventually turning our beautiful country with this rich history into something that we will never recognize. So these are some of the things that I could think of, but of course there are other stuff that we could talk about if we had time. So yeah, that's a short answer. I hope I did justice to the question.
Especially talking about your experience from your hometown, that's quite interesting. So I'm going to take a question from the chat, and this is for you, Sahela. You talked about how you're in touch with your family and your friends in Afghanistan daily. So some of our audience members are very curious about how easy it is to communicate on a daily basis with those left behind in Afghanistan.
Thank you so much. Yes, since the Taliban took over Afghanistan on daily basis, hourly basis, we have been in contact with our friends, families, and because we were really very much concerned about their safety. Members of my family were working with the government, with the international organizations, my colleagues, my friends. Like they're all in one way or the other are involved working with the government or international NGOs. So we were very much concerned about their safety, and that's why we were calling. I remember me and my husband, both of us were like on the phones, having no time for our kids, trying to help facilitate some process in close coordination, of course, some of them with Dr. Beatty. So we were trying to help our AUC, American University of Central Asia, our alumni who were stuck in Afghanistan, our friends. So far, it was easy to contact them. Yeah, sometimes they were like, as they were hiding from Taliban and going from one place to another place, sometimes the internet was an issue, connection was an issue. But other than that, we were able to contact them through different channels. If one was not answering, so called the other, and through other friends, we would find them, and we were able to facilitate and help some of our friends and family members for a safe evacuation from Afghanistan. And still, it's yes, the internet is there. So WhatsApp, Viber, Facebook, so far there not has been much restriction on these, but eventually, as I just yesterday was watching the women's demonstration on the street where like their phones were broken by Taliban and they were beaten, so they were like secretly holding this demonstration and inside the homes. So now it is a bit risky to, yes, sometimes my parents warn me not to talk about sensitive issues. Even when I was coming for this program, I was warned by some family members, please don't speak against Taliban a lot so that it will affect our life here directly. Yes, they are afraid. They are conscious, they are taking care of this issue, and also we are taking care of this issue while talking to them. So we were try to control our language because somehow we are safe here, but we are worried about them and their safety there. I think until the Taliban are seeking recognition, somehow they are allowing these social media things a little bit, but once I don't know what will happen in the future, it's totally uncertain. They may totally ban us. They did it like last time, the TV, even for one call, for one telephone call, people would travel to the Pakistan or to the some other countries just to make a call for their family members or their relatives out of country.
I'll go back to the audience. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I'm just curious, the future seems so bleak, and the only thing I can get is that the only hope is that the Taliban should be removed. So my question is, given the recent history of Afghanistan, and some people think it's not necessarily as recent as we think it is, this is a continued problem. When the Taliban is removed, then what? What do we have?
Okay, Jawed, are you there? Did you hear the question?
I heard part of it, but if you could repeat that if possible.
Yes, so speaker was saying that the situation is obviously very terrible for the people living in Afghanistan. The only hope seems to be the overthrow of the Taliban government. But once the Taliban were pushed out of power, we know from before that when the Soviets withdrew in 1989, the country fell into a horrible civil war where the city of Kabul was bombarded by artillery randomly every day by one of the militia groups. So do you think if the Taliban were pushed out of power, it would be anarchy again, or would something better replace them?
I think I see there are two sides of it. One side is the responsibility that, again, belongs to the people of Afghanistan. The other side of the responsibility, and the high stakes are, falls again in the basket of the United States. Because when the United States intervened in 2001, there was a reason. So does this mean, I want to answer this, and there's a rhetorical question here. Does the United States trust the Taliban that something like 9/11 would not happen again? Or the international community? Would this something similar, is there a possibility, is that possibility have been removed, that something horrible like 9/11 would not happen in any country outside of Afghanistan? That's the biggest question. That's a question for the international community that they have to think about. For us, the way I see it in our history and for the last 60 years, it's mostly governments have been installed, foreign intervention, and mainly because of the foreign intervention. That was the main reason of it. Whether we look into the 80s and 90s, whether when the Taliban came in, there was they were supported by the Pakistan, they were receiving support from there, and then they were secretly receiving support from the United States as well at the time. Once they were in power and they posed a threat to the United States and the international community, then they were removed. But now the question is again,
I think we lost, Jawed, are you back? No, okay, so we have, okay, we have time for one question, last question. I know many of you in the audience are asking yourselves, what can I do to help those who are suffering in Afghanistan? And maybe we could turn to you, Suhaila. So if you're just a typical American wanting to help, would giving money to the Red Cross, for example, or some humanitarian organization, would that be the best way in which we could help those left behind in Afghanistan?
I
Thank you. I don't know, by helping Afghans, first of all, what we do mean. Should we help them economically? Like just to send them some hundreds of dollars to survive for some times or for this upcoming winter, especially, or by helping like in a long term. I would very much appreciate if I know that Afghan people are desperately looking for help, both economically and politically also. But if we help them, through some humanitarian acts of sending money, I don't know how, trust me, I have no idea how directly or indirectly they can help. I've been watching some people doing fundraising for one name or the other to help Afghan women cause but I'm not sure how much those Afghan in need are benefiting from these fundraising and from these helps. But if we really want to help Afghan people at this very critical time, it is to help them through raising their voices in solidarity with Afghan people, urging their government, their respective governments, to do something as an act of humanitarian to help Afghan people. I would not say, I will stop myself saying that Afghan women. Trust me, even men are in a problem. Even men are not enjoying their basic rights. So the minority groups and everyone. So through different international organizations, of course, we appreciate any penny that anyone is contributing to the for the Afghan people's cause. But I would more appreciate if this help and support will be providing on political basis, to help the Afghan people through their governments, through international organizations, raise voices, human rights activists, women rights activists. Today is the world of social media, networking. So I think if we wish to do something for Afghan people who are desperately looking for international support, who are looking up for US as a guardian of human rights, as a United Nations for any kind of help and support. So people collectively on different roles, but collectively may pursue the same cause, which is helping Afghanistan and Afghan people coming out of this situation. That's I hope it's convincing, but for me at the moment, more not monetary help, but moral support is more important to be shown to Afghan people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahela. So I want to thank our panelists for answering these very important and challenging questions. And I also want to thank the audience for the questions. And so Jawed also wants to answer. Please, Jawed. I'm sorry, John was having some connection issues here. So again, I want to thank the audience for their excellent questions and for their thoughtful participation in our program. So now I'll turn the program back to Debbie.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the Q&A. Thank you to the panelists. When the Taliban first seized the country, they said, well, it's our country. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you think it's only your country? What about the people who are fleeing? It's their country too. I know you're not going to forget that. We are not going to forget that. And the mission needs to be done. Before I ask our hosts at Indiana Humanities to say a few words, before I forget, In 2 short weeks, I'm going to ask all of you to please come back and join us again, getting back to our more regular schedule. On November the 17th, this is a Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock, again by Zoom. We're going to have a program in the United Arab Emirates, 50 years young. And the Deputy Chief of Mission for the United Arab Emirates to the Embassy in the United States, to DC, Shima Argash, is that correct? She's the woman. She's going to be presenting this program, so please join us again. Before I ask our host, the president of the Indiana Humanities, to bid us a good evening, I want to leave you with a poem that was written by a young Afghan-American woman named Saja Allah Arar and translated into English. It's titled Desire for World Peace. We think this is a great way to end the program. Desire for world peace. Wishing there is lasting world peace. I wish to see young and old, lips full of smile, wishing to live together as humans, where there is no difference of color, nation, and language. Wishing no children become orphans, where for a piece of bread, they suffer illiteracy and hard child labor. Wishing sympathy comes to every heart, so humanity is one body and one soul. Allah wishes for a renewed land, where war is despised, where there is peace, war is cussed, a desire for a lasting world peace. So may I please introduce Kira Amstutz, who's the president of the Indiana Humanities.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm just very briefly going to wrap up. It was an honor to be with you panelists tonight. I can't imagine how difficult it is for you to tell your story to us, but we are honored by your presence. We will take your stories with us. We will carry this and the poem and really move forward with greater understanding and compassion for what's happening around the world and advocacy. I also would like to just welcome everyone to Indiana Humanities, and I hope you'll come back. Poetry is part of our mission, history, understanding world cultures, and celebrating our common humanity. So with that, I bid you farewell this evening. And again, it is an honor to be with you all. Thank you to the Council on World Affairs. Larry Cimino has been a longtime friend of Indiana Humanities, and this wouldn't have happened without him. And I would also need to definitely mention my colleague, Claire Mushbaugh, who runs all of the things in the background to make our technology work and to bring us all together here this evening. So Claire, thank you very much, as always, and it was wonderful to be with you. Thank you. Well done, Sarah.